Hi everyone, I'm Lubaina Rangwala from the World Resources Institute. I work with the urban development team and have been working on community-based resilience over the past few years.
Yeah, you should be able to screen share now. Great.
Okay. Just a minute. Yeah. So I'm going to, as I said, I'm going to share some of the highlights of our work on community resilience to set the tone for our conversation today. So far, we've worked in 3 countries, India, Indonesia, and Brazil, and have established that city resilience plans will fail short if policies, plans, and physical interventions do not adequately represent the needs of the most vulnerable people in our societies. This is a site and services scheme from Surat in Ugat, where community members constantly deal with issues of waterlogging and severe floods every year. And every year they come together and invest in pre-monsoon preparedness activities like paving their roads, paving their roads, cleaning drains, waterproofing their roofs, etc. And every year they face income losses due to waterlogging and not being able to reach their work. This is another community we worked in, Morarji Wasahat, the slum settlement in central Surat, facing similar issues of where sorry, one of my panelists is not being able to get. Rashi, can you, I'm like multitasking that. Can you just...
Yes, definitely. Who is this?
Nalini from Sirudala. She's somehow not being...
I'll speak with her. Thank you. You can go ahead.
Thank you so much. So sorry, what I was saying is, so this is Morarji Wasahat, the second community we worked in, where residents have actually built up their thresholds and otlas, as they call them in Gujarat, to prevent water from entering their home. This is from Semarang, a fishing community called Tanjung Mas in Semarang, Indonesia, where residents have built these bridges across the settlement to get around in areas that are most exposed to coastal flooding. They've propped up their homes on stilts, and all of this investment every year is being done by people coming together and making interventions in their communities. To make the point that residents are constantly investing in adaptation actions to deal with these recurrent shocks and stresses. And they're the only ones who are sort of building this resilient infrastructure in their communities, as best without the kind of technical knowledge and support that one should have, and not really calling it resilient infrastructure. Also, that these practices or social and financial capital can actually be integrated in slum improvement schemes or other sort of organized efforts in low-income communities. So, making this point, but also highlighting that that these activities in our work was seen primarily around visible climate risks like flooding, sea level rise, landslides, but very little kind of collective action in both Surat and Semarang and Brazil as well, where residents spoke of coming together around invisible risks like heat, for example. There were very few collective, in fact, literally no collective measures. Most of the measures were comfort measures like we drink more water or use shading devices, try to keep ourselves less exposed, etc. So it's also to sort of point to the fact that as a city, there is a deficit of knowledge around invisible risks like heat. And so we end up with built forms like this is Kosaravas, a massive slum rehabilitation colony in Surat, where 19,000 households from across Surat were rehabilitated in this settlement here. And our surveys have shown that people found, respite from the routine waterlogging in their homes, but were now subjected to stifling levels of indoor heat and humidity. In fact, one resident shared that he has never experienced this kind of indoor heat as he does now in the fourth floor apartment in Kosada Vas. So this is also to say that heat risk remains as an invisible risk in our cities, and most community members manage this risk through localized measures, but rarely through collective action, and therefore almost never this sort of never aggregates as clear mitigation strategies that can influence the built environment and regulatory and policy mechanisms around it. Our third important finding from COSAD again is that that these communities were actually very weak in social ties, because the lottery system of relocation had severed social ties and with neighbors, political and social institutions in the places that they lived in before here, which left them with no kind of acumen to collectively come together and organize around these kinds of issues. And most of our sort of engagements were grievances and kind of led to conversations around safety and security in the neighborhood, and very little on disaster preparedness or climate resilience. This message is further kind of attested in our recent work, most recently in Kerala and Kochi, where social networks at state and city level are so well established as routine work for them. So, you have networks like the Kudumbashree and Asha workers communities on an every basis and have local knowledge of their needs and challenges, and can immediately develop localized strategies during disaster or crisis situations, like the one we're facing today with COVID-19, where Kerala has slowly emerged as a quote-unquote best practice in India. So and there and then there are so many examples of ill-informed policies, guidelines, and containment strategies across most of our Indian cities that are based on very little knowledge of the ways in which marginal and vulnerable communities and people live, and has led to one of the largest migrant exoduses that we're seeing in our cities today. So this message is basically to emphasize the importance of community engagement, and is sort of amplified in most of the work that our speakers today will bring on the table, and to say that community engagement is essential in designing long-term resilience and response strategies. So without further delay, I'd like to actually start our panel discussion and introduce speakers. My first speaker was Nalini, but I'm not sure. Okay, she's on. It says she's on.
Yes, I'm on.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sorry, you had trouble signing in. So Miss Nalini Shekhar, co-founder of Hasiru Dala, a community-based organization that works closely with the waste worker community. So today Nalini is going to speak about organizing marginal workers in our cities, and present examples that speak to the challenge of aid dispersal for organized versus not very well organized labor in the city. So over to you, Nalini. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much, and happy that this conversation is happening. And I think many of us, what I'm going to speak, many of us have experienced in different cities. It's not going to be something new, but some reflection of what we have done. And yesterday I was talking to waste workers from Latin America of different countries, and their situation has not been very different from ours. So Hasiru Dala is an organization that organizes waste pickers. We have about 12,000 members. And during the COVID situation, we were able to raise up to the occasion to support the waste workers just beyond waste pickers. And about in Bangalore, about 10,000 people were serviced. In addition to that, we service a lot of migrant population, and a total of 60,000 families we provided 1 month ration. So it's almost 100 tons, I'm sorry, 1,000 tons of material was used to support 60,000 families. So with that background, I wanted to share the kind of work we were able to do with waste pickers and also non-waste pickers who were not organized, and city did not know where these migrants lived. We kind of knew this is a labor camp, there is a lot of people here, but that is it. And also citizen raised up to the occasion. Both the government did not know where their workers were, neither did we know where all our workers were. So, and workers did not trust us because we did not reach the, the aid in time. For example, yesterday, after doing 60,000 households, we continue to do it. And yesterday I saw a man sitting and eating the leaf litter on the street because he didn't get anything. So where are we? What are we doing? And how many people are there? We have no idea. If you just look at our own services, waste pickers, we were able to, we knew how many people were on the prescription medicine, how many people were pregnant, how many people are lactating mothers, and we knew how many children are more vulnerable than the others. So we were able to give not only ration kit, we were able to provide hygiene kits, we were able to provide prescription medicine, we were able to give them high protein food. Our experience in the past with the demonetization time, because waste pickers and waste industry runs on the cash flow, that time we had seen a lot of children going malnourished within a week. So we didn't want to have, we had women also weighing 24 and 28 kilos. So we had that previous experience and knowledge. So we immediately jumped onto it and then started providing them high protein kits. So this we were able to do because we knew our community, we knew where they lived and what they are, and our connection was them. They trusted us, we trusted them. But when we served another 50,000 migrants, that was a big challenge because we did not know where they live, what kind of food. In fact, in Bangalore, we have a lot of migrants even in waste picker community. So we were able to even go to the minute detail of, I will give him that particular family masoor dal and boiled rice. By the other family, I give jowar ka atta and green gram. The other people will give you tur dal and rice because of the level of information we had. While all the other 50,000 we did, okay, rice, dal, and of course we gave a good quantity, 25 kilos for a month. But we did not service any other need for them because we didn't know whether they came from Odia or Bihar or Bengal. So there was a huge difference in the kind of services we were able to provide waste pickers and non-waste pickers. Some of our funders said waste pickers are privileged. We said we want everyone to be privileged, not just waste pickers. So that was a huge thing that we saw in the aid distribution itself. Because we knew our community, we were able to do more. Other people we did not know, we gave the common information and common things that we could give. We also gave a lot of things with children, with the information on COVID and Kannada and Hindi, but we couldn't do that with the other people because we didn't know how many children were there. That was one of the things. The second thing we have seen, there's a rush to get into the trains. They have to go because they don't feel comfortable here. We have not made them welcome. So there is a rush to go. And yesterday, from last 1 week, we are just doing a lot of research and asking all our waste picker how many people want to go back so that we can help them to get the train. Not one single person wanted to go back. So this shows organizing, connecting them, and access to livelihood and dignity of labor. In Bangalore, people, we call them, entrepreneurs. We call them silent environmentalists. So the language that we use is very different and dignified. So I think this is one example I can share with you what is happening right now. Thank you, Libya. Libina.
Thank you, Nalini. This was really informative to kind of know what is happening on the ground. I will invite my next speaker, Namrata Kapoor from the Indian Institute of Human Settlements in Bangalore. Current research, Namrata, if you could get your, yeah, hi. Namrata's current research looks at the effect of financialization of land on the production, consumption, construction and consumption of housing in Indian cities. She will speak about her recent collaborative work with the Doctors for You Foundation and IIT Mumbai that establishes an association between the poor conditions of natural light and ventilation in slum rehabilitation buildings, SRA buildings in Mumbai, and the spread of tuberculosis among its residents. Thank you for joining us, Namita. Over to you.
Thanks, Lubaina. So like Lubaina just said, I'm going to speak to you about the study that we completed last year, which proves a sense of association between architectural parameters and the spread of tuberculosis in the resettlement colonies. Now, what does this exactly mean? Let me just elaborate on this. Our study mapped 3 resettlement colonies in the ME ward, and it's important that we say that these are resettlement colonies. All the residents in these colonies were project affected people, so they sort of came from the same socioeconomic backgrounds and had similar eating and food habits. So we studied 3 of these resettlement colonies and found that there were 2 resettlement colonies that had up to 10% of households suffering from tuberculosis, and 1 resettlement colony that had less than 1% rate, 1% households suffering from tuberculosis. And so when we further dug into these cases, what we found is that the 2 resettlement colonies that had very high cases of tuberculosis were built using slum redevelopment norms. And the 1 resettlement colony that had less than 1% tuberculosis households was built using general regulations. Now, what does this mean? Anybody who's from Mumbai knows that buildings that are built under the slum redevelopment regulation have relaxed norms. The government is trying to fit in as many people on as small a land parcel as possible, because that kind of is the more efficient use of land in that manner. And for that, what they have done is they have relaxed the conditions of the distance between the 2 buildings. So the buildings are built much closer to each other, and they are much higher in density as compared to the buildings that are built out of general regulations, which are not built under the slum redevelopment laws. Just to give you an example of how close, like the distance between 2 G+7 buildings for general regulation under the 1991 norms is supposed to be 16 meters. So between 2 buildings, you have 16 meters of space. In the slum redevelopment regulation under the 1991 norms, that distance is reduced to 3 meters. So you can understand that the flats which are on the ground floor get absolutely no light and ventilation. And we were studying these 3 set of buildings, and what we found is that there is a positive sense of association, that buildings that have bad conditions of light and ventilation because of the SRA norms have a higher spread of TB. And it's important to note that 80% of the people who got TB after they came into these resettlement colonies. So it is not, so there is that kind of link as well. Okay, so now why am I talking about this case study in the section on community engagement? And that's because I want to talk to you about the role of Doctors for You Foundation in actually setting up the study. Who are the Doctors for You Foundation? Doctors for You Foundation is an NGO that works with disaster relief management. I think they're about 13 years old. And they have been working in the ME ward since at least 12 years now. And the way in which this works is they've been working in providing TB relief through the DOTS program. They are the sort of external private NGO partner in this TB relief work. And so the way in which this works is that government hospital will tell a TB patient that you have tuberculosis, and then they are assigned a health post, and some of the health posts are coming to Doctors for You workers. The health workers of the Doctors for You are also people who live in this community, and so they have a very close idea of understanding, the community and their kind of, their apprehensiveness, or they know them at an intimate level in that manner. So the Doctors for You health workers saw this spatial pattern. They recognized this spatial pattern, and they set up the study after recognizing the spatial pattern. They roped in IIT to, scientifically measure the architectural parameters. They roped me in to kind of talk about the problems with the urban design regulation, with the urban regulations for building SRA buildings. And individually, in our capacities as urban planners and as people who are architects, have been crying hoarse about this. But this sense of association with tuberculosis is a very important cog in this, because as architects and urban planners, we would not have been able to kind of establish this. But their embeddedness in providing the DOTS programs in these neighborhoods actually helps them recognize the spatial pattern. Also, sort of a shout out to the MMR EIS grants that actually facilitated this this interdisciplinary study to take place. The data that was used to kind of talk about the number of TB cases in all three colonies was the Doctors for You data, and this is also an important thing. They've been recording this data for the last 12 years, and what is sort of important here is that we know how government health posts and governments can get very cagey about sharing this data, and you can see how Doctors for You having their own data helps facilitate do this study. And it's very good that, especially in the current environment, to also be able to triangulate data through this community engagement, community embedded NGO like Doctors for You. The third thing I want to talk to you about is that when we sort of released the results of this study, at that point in time, people asked us, like, what are we supposed to do about it? And really speaking, there's very little you can do once the buildings have been built, right? Like these are, to give you an example, these are about, each resettlement colony has about 4,800 households. So these are large colonies. And so the kind of, suggestions that were being given at that point in time were to sort of put ventilators and, somehow improve the airflow within each of these households. But some activists sort of like accused us by saying that, oh no, you should actually be saying that this entire colony needs to be like pulled down, very Stuart Igo style. Yeah, just one, I'm just wrapping up. Yeah. And what happened is that the Doctors for You people said that, no, you cannot be suggesting something like this because, you have the trust of the people, and what if they do not get their housing back after it is pulled down? And there is a certain kind of like ethical commitment that you have when you're working as an embedded sort of NGO, and that's what I just wanted to highlight, these things, the availability of the data, the kind of pattern recognition spatially, and the kind of ethical sort of commitment to the embedded community that you're working within is important from there.
Great. I think this is an incredible example and really sort of builds our argument further. I will now request Dr. Desai to come on. Hello, ma'am. Dr. Desai, she's the Honorary Technical Director of the Urban Health and Climate Resilience Center for Excellence in Surat. In fact, UHCRC under Dr. Desai's leadership is our partner in Surat. We did all this great work in Surat with them. So just wanted to say that. The center focuses on issues of public health in the city and its most vulnerable communities. She will today talk about the importance of routine engagement in vulnerable communities through social networks such as the ASHA workers, Anganwadis, and urban health centers in Gujarat in providing long-term urban health services and amenities in Surat City. Thank you, ma'am. Over to you.
Okay, I will try to link the previous three speakers' points also when I talk about Surat. Surat is special because it has faced several threats, several disasters, and has come out. It's a real resilient city as far as the infrastructure and the economy is concerned. But same is not very true for health. And it all depends on how we define health and how we look at health. Coming to one of the comments, before I go to some of the points which they are linked otherwise, Lubaina talked about Kerala and said community is prepared and community is involved and active and there is ownership of community. Looking at the population structure of Kerala and Surat, other than literacy, which is always very high in Kerala, is they have 10% migrants, Surat city has 50% migrants. And when there are predominant migrants, poor migrants, the ownership of the city and the engagement of people in any program is a challenge by itself. Second is the Bangalore experience of working NGO, very effective NGO working with direct, because uh, government learns from the NGO's enthusiasm and try to build up a model in the service sector. But then what we cannot introduce, I am an ex-government officer and continuously working as NGO also. What I have understood is what we cannot install or copy paste amongst our workers is enthusiasm and commitment to serve the poor. And that's where the challenge lies, in addition to other challenges which were discussed. The third is a tuberculosis case, which also I would like to mention about, because for 2 days only I had a engineers alumni associations interaction with them, and I said housing is the nearest environment for all. Our teaching and our practice both have a challenge, uh, and that's where we need to focus. So the health is also a part. Health should be part of the planning when housing is planned. Coming to again Surat scenario, we studied public health resilience of Surat city and all municipal corporations of Gujarat. And what emerged is migration and poverty are the challenges for urban health vulnerability. And we need to attend to that. And how to attend that needs a lot of discussion and deliberations. Another important thing is how do we define health? I remember one of the commissioner of municipal corporation, not of Surat, told, when I said, sir, what do you think your health problems are in your city? He said, don't talk about tuberculosis, malaria, which is everywhere. I am facing problem of road accidents. I am facing problem of suicide. I am facing problem of poisoning. And these are the urban problems which also needs to be attended. Surat being a good health system compared to other cities, because it was built up earlier looking at its challenges. But when we analyze the public health vulnerability of all municipal corporation and compared, what emerged is Surat stood somewhere in middle. And why Surat was in middle was because of its socio-demography. So health has several dimensions. In fact, health is a biological element which is influenced by several factors, which includes environment, climate, economy, and even the socio-economic of health services is all health services in Surat evolved with the challenges which emerge, health challenges which emerge in the city. We saw the health challenges with spurt in the population, and that spurt was not due to birth rate, but it was due to migration. So migration is determined by economic activity and also, and that's why we started with filariasis, which was more a climatic origin because of the humidity, because of the non-availability of drainage. So that is environmental factor also. Then came malaria, then came the HIV/AIDS, then came the dengue and other challenges, and now we are facing the problem of corona. Surat stands second in Gujarat for this problem. So the continuous threats coming up in the city, including plague and leptospirosis, has built up a system which is more need-based, but it is still lacking in what is required. And these are some of the things which I would like to mention hurriedly. One is, so it is said that urban health is, as I mentioned earlier, is a biological element, but urban health is on 4 strong pillars, and that includes um, engineering, enforcement, education, and engagement of the population. And the fourth one is the one which is a challenge when you have a population which doesn't consider city as their own, but they are part of the city. And then they have their own limitations because of poverty, illiteracy, and other pressing demands. And that's why they continue to work with that. So we have a structure under National Urban Health Mission, providing support to the urban health system, which is a primary healthcare to tertiary healthcare. And we have workers like ASHA, which is for urban, is USHA, Urban Social Health Activists, Anganwadi workers. We also have a system of Mahila Arogya Samitis in the urban poor area, and we have CBOs and NGOs working in the city. So there is some structure which is a link between community and between service providers or the urban health system in the city. And what is observed is the preventive services are the domain of government programs or government system, and curative services still remains a domain of private sector. That is the challenge for the
Ma'am, if you can conclude the
to the challenges which are faced and which should be solved. One is the intersectoral convergence, because health is an outcome and is not an independent entity. So all departments, decentralization, real decentralization of the activity. Public-private partnership is a strong and meant for Surat medical practitioners and needs to be promoted in every city. Disaster preparedness is a challenge like corona. When your routine is weak, you cannot suddenly come up with the interventions for the emergencies, and that's where the challenge lies. Um, what is required is the planning, which should include health. Every planning should include health focus, should have a child friendly focus, women friendly focus. Ultimately, it should be human friendly focus, and that's where we all need to work. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'd like to now invite Sitaram Schiller from Director of the Center for Promoting Democracy. Sitaram, if you can put on your camera and your mic. Thank you. So
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Hello. Good.
Something gone wrong.
Yeah, so I'll just introduce. So the Center for Promoting Democracy focuses on strengthening systems of urban governance, highlighting the importance of diversity, dissent, tolerance, collective decision-making, and participative institution building in Indian cities. He will close our panel today and with sharing his work on the community participation bill and the need to institutionalize community engagement through local governance systems like area sabhas in Mumbai. So over to you, Shita. Thank you so much.
So, yeah.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So what we seen, I'll take a case of Mumbai to uh, share some observations. What happened in Mumbai after this COVID thing, and that is one means one observation is started how community responds to it. And when I'm saying the communities, I'm talking about means two sectors. One is the homeless population and the migrant workers, and another one is the informal settlements and the people in living in a formal settlements. So in a homeless population, they homeless and migrants, they're actually not recognized as the citizens in the cities. So administration is not really much concerned about them, and then they were really thinking what to do with them. But finally, first time the Mumbai Municipal Corporation and Maharashtra government is decided to take care of the homeless population, and they started some initiative. They formed a group of coordination, and they invite civil society organizations who can actually provide relief to them. And then they started providing relief. From the day one, the organizations like us were telling them that don't provide them food, or don't provide, means there is no need of the shifting them to anywhere, but provide them the health facility and the food grains. But corporation and other administration also, even the collector office, was not really keen to do that. And finally, after 2 months, now they are thinking about it. But that is what the homeless population is. And the migrants, means we know the stories of the migrants, but these two populations are not the voters. So not the recognized by the political parties and the political powers, as well as not recognized by the administration. In an informal settlement and in a formal settlements, how then people, and now how the people are responding to it. So what people are doing, so people are actually, they are getting organized, and they are trying to get help from the administrative infrastructures. Like they are approaching health posts for the health needs, the testings, and that kind of a needs. They are approaching the corporators for getting the food and food grains. So that kind of, and they are approaching the health post staff, which is in Bombay, it is known as the community health volunteers. So that, and taking their help, they are approaching the Safai Kamgars who are cleaning their communities, and they are trying to sanitize their communities with their help, and they are also accessing the ration and all that kind of a facilities. But same time, they are taking the control now in their hand, because there is no any political elected representatives or any administrative officials are not actually giving them a trust or a confidence that they will come in a support in this kind of a situation. So communities are taking lead now. They are getting organized. They are running the community kitchens. They are taking the precautions that they are doing that this, okay, this gully will be managed by this group of volunteers, and they are using that, okay, uh, so how many household, around 100 or 150 household, so every need of these household will be conveyed to these volunteers, and these volunteers will try to get a relief, and they try to buy things. So I think this is how they are trying to organize themselves and taking a precaution from the COVID virus. And other thing is, they are also, if someone is having a issues of health, and they are approaching the health centers, they are approaching the ambulances, as well as they are exploring the support. So they are approaching the political parties, they are approaching the NGOs, they are approaching the other institutions who can provide them support. So they are preparing the list of the needful communities, they are preparing, and they are doing this work. They are doing they are facilitating this relief thing. I think that they are creating awareness about the uh, what is the impact of the COVID among that pockets of themselves. This is what the decentralized governance they are creating of their own. This is one governance, and there is another infrastructure of the governance, and that can be easily formalized, and that is very simple. But that is the discussion we are having from 1972 till now, and we finally had this discussion in our parliament. And in 1991, we passed the 74th constitutional amendment. And this 74th constitutional amendment was talking about decentralization. And through decentralization, they are talking about the accountability and transparency. But around 25 years now, completion of this decentralization mission. Meantime, all the NGO and civil society organizations like us were thinking, okay, people participation is the way, people participation is the way. Many other, many government institutions and programs, uh, they use this term like people participation and people participation, ladder of people participation, and many efforts are done. But I must say that there was no heart, there was no agreement of the political class and administration to decentralize the systems in urban areas. It happens good in a rural areas, in a panchayati raj system, but it is not happening with that effort in urban areas. And why that is not happening? Because when we are saying that decentralization is needful, then we are arguing that okay, why? So we are saying that it will bring a transparency, it will bring the accountability, and that is where the problem is. We were thinking that our political class is ready to get transparent. Our political class is ready to get accountable. And actually, that's why they are not ready, really don't want to share their political powers. Why? So there is, because nobody want to share the powers. But still, it is, if we are creating another layer of the institution at the decentralized level, the kind of weightage people are giving to the MLAs will not be given. And then they say that then people will not know us, they will not come to us. Then how we will establish there that they are the representatives of the people. So, yeah.
Yeah, just to, sorry, we're almost towards the end part. So if you can conclude, and if we've been given 5 minutes extra, so if anyone has, maybe one or two questions and that can be clubbed or something, just some reflections would be good. So if you can conclude, Sridhar.
Okay, so I have 2 minutes.
Yeah, you have a minute.
A minute.
And if there are questions, then we can go a little over. Otherwise, we'll conclude the session because we are over with that.
Right. So, yeah, so my concluding remarks will be like there is a need of understanding the politics of our country in urban areas, and there is a need of creating more spaces or creating more representation spaces, because in a rural part there is a gram panchayat and that kind of a structure, but urban part there was not. Even the area sabha kind of model what we were trying to experiment, and these models are not really happening because they are not the constitutional yet, they are not legalized yet. Even the that whatever form they are there, they are not implemented by the governments. And I think that civil society need to work collectively to build this kind of understanding among the people who are the decision makers, that this decentralization of power through the through the concepts like area sabha, concepts like area sabha representatives need to be introduced, need to be debated, need to be need to be communicated to the policymakers, and we need to build pressure to them to make it happen. And I think that will make the resilient communities for the future.
Great. Thank you so much. I mean, that's actually an extremely important note to end on. I really want to thank all our speakers and the audience for the questions in the Q&A box. I see that a lot of the questions are answered. Unfortunately, we are way over time, actually 2 minutes over time, and I don't see any open questions. So I think we'll close this session and move to the next session on affordable housing. Thank you again, everyone, for your participation, and look forward to many more conversations.
Thank you, Lubaida, for having me.